I showed up at my ex-boyfriend's engagement party. He grabbed my arm in a panic, begging me not to make a scene. I rolled my eyes and walked straight past him, heading directly for his uncle, Ford. I'm pregnant. It's yours. Ford stared at the pregnancy test in my hand for a long, unreadable moment. Then he pulled me down to sit beside him, draped his arm around my shoulder, and smiled. Well, if it's mine, then naturally, I have to take responsibility. Ethan's engagement party was sickeningly expensive. I stood at the entrance of the sprawling estate, watching him inside, playing the perfect host with a champagne flute in hand. I wanted to vomit. Looking at him, all I could think about was how this scumbag whispered sweet nothings into my ear, while simultaneously locking down an engagement with some old money heiress he'd known since diapers. It made my skin crawl. Guests were flooding in, and as Ethan turned, his eyes locked onto mine. He froze. Then, pure panic set in. He practically sprinted over, blocking my path like a nervous bouncer. Harper, look, I thought we talked about this, he hissed, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. Don't cause a scene. This day is huge for me, okay? Just leave. He seriously thought I was here to have a catfight with his fiancée for his mediocre affection. Please. My target today was way out of his league. I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Move, Ethan. Get out of my way. I'm looking for my baby daddy. His face twisted in confusion. Baby daddy? What the hell? I shoved Ethan aside. He stumbled, staring in disbelief, as I strutted straight toward the main table, locking eyes with the most dangerous man in the room. The moment I stopped in front of Ford Sterling, the volume in the banquet hall dropped. Silence swept across the room like a cold wave. Everyone turned to look. Not at me, really, but at Ford. Ford Sterling always had this faint, polite smile. He gave off an air of elegant nobility. But get close enough, and you'd see the glacial indifference in his eyes. He was unpredictable, a shark in a tailored Italian suit. Right now, he looked up at me with that same unreadable smile, an eyebrow raised in silent question. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the pregnancy test and slapped it into his hand. I kept my voice deadpan. Ford, I'm pregnant. It's yours. Ford looked at the plastic stick in his hand for a long, agonizing moment. His expression gave nothing away. Then he reached out, grabbed my wrist and pulled me down to sit beside him. He draped a heavy arm around my shoulders, looking me dead in the eye with a smirk. Well, he announced, his voice smooth as silk, if it's mine, then naturally I'm going to take responsibility. After a second of weird, heavy silence, the old man sitting next to Ford's father suddenly slapped Ford on the back and burst into laughter. Good, good. You son of a bitch, you. You finally got a girlfriend and kept her hidden from me, hey. The tension in the room snapped, and instantly, the place erupted. After the initial shock, the ass-kissing began. I was just saying, no girl in New York was good enough for Mr. Sterling. Turns out he was hiding a beauty in his golden tower all along. Classic Ford. Silent mover. He's going to be a dad before we even knew he was dating. The old man can finally rest easy. Yet, he totally leapfrogged Ethan on this one. When's the wedding wine being poured, Ford? I'll admit, I did this on purpose. Choosing this exact moment to approach Ford was 100% calculated to humiliate Ethan. Ford was Ethan's uncle. The relative Ethan respected and feared the most. If I became his aunt, Ethan would have to bow his head every time he saw me. That thought alone was delicious. I had imagined a million ways Ford might react, but I never expected him to just own it. He was acting like we were genuinely a cozy couple. But the reality? We'd met maybe 5 times, and one of those times was a drunken, messy night. We hadn't exchanged more than 20 sentences in our entire lives. His hand on my shoulder was burning through my dress. My skin felt like it was on fire and I was starting to flake. That is, until Ethan stormed over, his face flushed. Harper, what the actual fuck are you doing? Seeing him panic brought my confidence right back. I straightened my neck like a queen. I told you. I came to find the father of my child. Ethan looked at Ford, his eyes wide with betrayal. Uncle Ford. Ford's smile faded just a fraction. Ethan, he said, his voice dropping an octave, instantly commanding. Your bride has been waiting. Go do your job. It wasn't a shout, but it was a warning. Ethan folded. Immediately. He looked at me, his jaw clenched, then turned and walked away like a kicked puppy. Just like that, I attended the rest of Ethan's engagement party as Ford Sterling's baby mama. The spotlight that should have been on Ethan shifted entirely to us. Especially Ford's father, the powerful patriarch of the Sterling dynasty. He spent the whole time grinning, sizing me up, asking about my health and prying into our relationship. Ford was calm. I was pretending to be calm. Suddenly, I regretted this. This was way too public. I should have done this in private. Finally, the torture ended. Ford offered to drive me home. He dismissed his chauffeur, got into the driver's seat of his black Maybach but didn't start the engine. Instead, he pulled out a cigar. He didn't light it. He just rolled it between his long fingers, staring out the windshield, deep in thought. The silence was suffocating. I shifted in the leather seat, ready to jump out, when he finally spoke. So. Speak. Whose bastard is it? I froze. I turned to look at him. His eyes were cold, detached, like he could see right through my soul. Once the shock wore off, anger took over. I snapped, "What do you mean?" Trying to wiggle out of it now. Ford curled his lip, his voice returning to that maddeningly gentle tone. "You misunderstand. I'm a man who pays his debts. If I do something, I own it." "But," his smile widened, but his eyes got colder, "I never fucked you." That was the second time today a man had denied me. I let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "You never fucked me? What, is this an immaculate conception? Am I the Virgin Mary?" My breathing was ragged. I fought down the urge to scream. "Ford, if you don't want to take responsibility, just say it. I came here today ready for you to deny it. We were both wasted that night. It was an accident. I chose today to tell you because, yeah, I wanted to stick it to Ethan, okay? Using you was low. My bad. But you don't have to humiliate me like this." Ford paused, then said patiently, "If I wanted to humiliate you, Harper, I wouldn't have played along with your little sitcom back there. Miss Harper, seriously, I didn't touch you. Not like that." He sounded so sure of himself that I started to doubt my own reality. Was it not him? Flashback to the yacht party. Ethan's birthday. I saw Ethan and that heiress, Tiffany, tongue wrestling in the hallway near the restrooms. I snapped. I drank enough tequila to kill a horse. I remember Ford helping me back to the cabin. He was probably just being a nice uncle, taking care of his nephew's wasted girlfriend. But my brain was fried by alcohol and rage. I was looping the image of Ethan cheating on me. I was sad. I was furious. And I needed to break something or someone. I didn't know Tiffany was his arranged fiancée then. I thought I was just too prudish to wait until marriage, and that's why Ethan strayed. In my drunken haze, I basically tackled Ford. I wrapped my arms around his neck and screamed, "It's just sex, right? If he can stick it in anyone he wants, if it means nothing to him, then I can do it too, okay? Fine. Maybe. Possibly. I was the aggressor. I might have semi-forced myself on Ford. But I definitely lost my virginity. Sure, I woke up alone the next morning, but my body hurt. I had the physical receipts. Unless. My face went pale. "Wait. You took me back to the room on the yacht, right?" Ford nodded. "I did. So, the guy I slept with wasn't you?" Ford paused. "It was me. Then how can you say you didn't touch me?" Ford hesitated. He actually frowned, looking like he was dealing with a complex business merger. It was rare to see this man, who always looked like he owned the world, struggle for words. I stared him down. He pressed his tongue against the inside of his cheek and sighed. "I wasn't clear enough. I touched you, Harper. I just didn't touch you in a way that makes babies." "Excuse me." Ford crushed the expensive cigar in his hand. I used my hand. Dash. The air inside the Maybach became impossibly thick. My ears were ringing. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering against my ribcage like a drum solo at a rock concert. "You used your hand," I repeated slowly, each word feeling foreign on my tongue. Ford's jaw tightened. For the first time since I'd known him, he actually looked uncomfortable. "You were drunk, Harper." Completely out of your mind. You were crying, angry, throwing yourself at me because you wanted to hurt Ethan. I wasn't going to take advantage of that. But my voice cracked. I woke up sore. There was blood. I thought. You scratched yourself climbing into the bed, Ford said quietly, his eyes fixed on the dashboard. You were thrashing around, insisting you wanted to lose your virginity to spite Ethan. I tried to calm you down. You wouldn't stop. He exhaled through his nose, a sound somewhere between frustration and resignation. So I gave you what you thought you needed. Enough to satisfy you, to make you stop crying. Then I stayed until you fell asleep. The memory came rushing back in fragments. The rough texture of his fingers. The gentle pressure. His voice, low and soothing, telling me to breathe. The release that came more from exhaustion and alcohol than anything else. And then, darkness. Oh my God. I buried my face in my hands. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. You were hurt, Ford said, and there was no judgment in his tone. Just fact. So if you didn't. I couldn't even finish the sentence. My whole plan, my entire revenge scheme, had been built on a foundation of absolute delusion. Then whose baby is this? Ford turned to look at me fully for the first time since we'd gotten in the car. His dark eyes swept over my face, searching. Is there actually a baby, Harper? The weight of his gaze made my stomach flip. I'd been so caught up in the theater of it all, in the beautiful catastrophe I was creating at Ethan's engagement party, that I hadn't stopped to consider what came after. I don't know, I whispered. The pregnancy test in my purse was a cheap drugstore special I'd bought on the way to the party. I'd peed on it in a Starbucks bathroom, watched the double lines appear, and felt a savage sort of satisfaction. Finally, something that would make Ethan suffer the way I'd suffered. But now, sitting in this car with a man who'd shown me more care in my worst moment than my actual boyfriend ever had, the satisfaction curdled into shame. I took the test this morning, I admitted. 2 lines. But I haven't been to a doctor. I saw the positive result and I thought. I trailed off, because explaining that I'd immediately weaponized a potential pregnancy to destroy my ex's engagement party sounded insane even to my own ears. Ford was quiet for a long moment. Then he started the engine. The Maybach purred to life, all that German engineering humming beneath us. Where are we going? I asked. Hospital, Ford said simply. If you're pregnant, we need to confirm it. And if you are, we need to figure out who the father actually is. The word actually hit me like a slap. Ford, I swear, I haven't been with anyone else. Ethan and I never. I was waiting. And that night on the yacht, I thought you. I believe you, Ford interrupted. His hands were steady on the steering wheel, navigating through the Manhattan traffic with practiced ease. Which means either the test is a false positive, or what? He didn't answer immediately. We drove in silence through the glittering city, past buildings that stretched toward the sky like steel fingers. The lights blurred together, gold and white and red, painting streaks across my vision. When we pulled up to Mount Sinai, Ford didn't park in the visitor lot. He drove straight to the private entrance, the one reserved for VIPs and people who could afford to skip the emergency room entirely. A valet appeared instantly, opening my door before I could even unbuckle my seatbelt. Mr. Sterling, the young man said with a deferential nod. Drive. Chen is waiting for you in Suite 7. Of course Ford had called ahead. Of course he had a doctor on standby. This was a man who controlled boardrooms and multi-million-dollar deals with a single phone call. A late-night pregnancy confirmation was probably the easiest thing he'd arranged all week. Dr. Chen was a small, efficient woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She didn't ask questions about my relationship with Ford, didn't raise an eyebrow at the fact that we'd shown up at 10 p.m. on a Saturday demanding immediate testing. She simply drew my blood, asked about my last period, and told me to wait. Ford and I sat in the pristine waiting room, surrounded by abstract art and the faint scent of lavender. He'd gotten us both coffee from some expensive machine in the corner. Mine sat untouched, cooling in my hands. Why did you help me back there? I asked suddenly. At the party. You could have denied everything. Thrown me out. Instead you. I gestured vaguely. You claimed me. Ford took a sip of his espresso, considering the question. Ethan's an idiot, he finally said. He had something good and he destroyed it because he thought he deserved better. The sterling name means something, Harper. It means we keep our word. We honor our commitments. Ethan forgot that. So this was about teaching him a lesson. No. Ford set down his cup and turned to face me. This was about the fact that you walked into that party with your head held high, ready to face down a room full of New York's elite, all because you wanted justice. That takes guts. And I respect that. His words settled over me like a warm blanket. For months, I'd felt small. Ethan had made me feel replaceable, insufficient, like I was some stepping stone to his real life with his real wife from his real social circle. But Ford was looking at me like I was someone worth respecting. The night on the yacht, I said quietly. Why did you stay? You could have left me there. Called someone else to deal with me. Ford's expression shifted, something almost vulnerable flickering across his features before he locked it down. Because you were crying in your sleep, he said. You kept saying his name. Asking why you weren't enough. And I. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know what it feels like to be seen as a means to an end rather than a person. Before I could respond, Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. Her expression was professionally neutral, which somehow made my heart race faster. The results are in, she said, gesturing for us to follow her into the consultation room. The office was all dark wood and medical degrees, the kind of space designed to convey both competence and discretion. Dr. Chen sat behind her desk, pulled up something on her computer, and then looked at me over her reading glasses. Miss Harper, you are indeed pregnant. Approximately 6 weeks along. The room tilted. I gripped the armrests of my chair, trying to anchor myself to reality. 6 weeks. 6 weeks ago was. That's impossible, I breathed. I haven't been with anyone. Not like that. Not ever. Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. I understand this might be surprising news. However, the HCG levels in your blood are consistent with a 6-week pregnancy. I'd like to schedule an ultrasound to confirm viability and rule out any complications. Dr. Chen, Ford said, his voice cutting through my panic with characteristic calm, is there any possibility this could be a medical error? Or perhaps another explanation for elevated HCG levels? It's rare, but certain medical conditions can cause false positives, Dr. Chen acknowledged. Certain types of tumors, for instance, or issues with the pituitary gland. But your levels are quite high, Miss Harper. I'd really recommend that ultrasound. I felt like I was drowning. My vision tunneled, and suddenly I was back in that yacht cabin, Ford's hand in my hair, his voice telling me to breathe, just breathe. Except this time it wasn't alcohol pulling me under. It was the impossible reality that my body was harboring life when I'd never actually created any. Harper. Ford's hand landed on my shoulder, warm and grounding. Look at me. I turned to meet his eyes. They were steady, unwavering, like lighthouses in a storm. We're going to figure this out, he said with such absolute certainty that I almost believed him. Dr. Chen, can you do the ultrasound now? Of course. Follow me. The ultrasound room was dim, lit only by the glow of the monitors. Dr. Chen had me lie back on the examination table, gel cold against my still flat stomach. Ford stood beside me, his presence a solid wall between me and complete breakdown. The wand pressed against my abdomen, and Dr. Chen's eyes fixed on the screen. She moved it slowly, methodically, her expression focused. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only watch the grainy black and white images that meant absolutely nothing to me. Then Dr. Chen paused. There, she said, pointing to a tiny flicker on the screen. That's the heartbeat. I stared at the pulsing blur. That was inside me. That tiny flutter of cells and potential, beating away like it had every right to exist. It appears to be a healthy, developing embryo, Dr. Chen continued, taking measurements, clicking buttons that I'm sure meant something to someone who understood medical imaging. Approximately 6 weeks and 3 days, based on size. How is this possible? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm telling you, I've never had sex. Not the actual way. How can I be pregnant? Dr. Chen pulled back the wand, wiping the gel from my skin with professional efficiency. Miss Harper, I need you to think very carefully. Are you absolutely certain there was no penetrative intercourse? Even briefly? Sometimes in cases of intoxication or trauma, memories can be. She's certain, Ford cut in, his tone brooking no argument. What other explanations are there? Dr. Chen hesitated, clearly weighing how much to say. Finally, she sighed. It's extremely rare, but there have been documented cases of pregnancy occurring through what we call splash conception or indirect contact. If seminal fluid comes into contact with the vaginal opening, even without penetration, it's theoretically possible for sperm to travel and fertilize an egg. The odds are astronomical, but not impossible. The room went very, very quiet. Slowly, like turning the wheel on a massive ship, I rotated my head to look at Ford. His face had gone completely blank, the way it did when he was processing information he didn't like during business negotiations. I'd seen him wear that exact expression once, when Ethan had tried to pitch him some half-baked investment scheme at a family dinner. Your hand, I said slowly. You used your hand. On me. Ford closed his eyes. Yes. And before that, you were, handling yourself. He stopped. Opened his eyes. The calculation happening behind them was almost visible. I was trying to take care of the situation without actually crossing any lines. You were very insistent, Harper. I needed you to calm down, to stop crying, to fall asleep. So I. He trailed off, his jaw working. I made it convincing. Oh my God. Dr. Chen, who had probably seen everything in her decades of medical practice, actually looked stunned. Mr. Sterling, are you saying there's a possibility that you... Apparently so, Ford said tightly. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the hum of the medical equipment, the distant sound of a phone ringing somewhere down the hall, the thundering of my own pulse in my ears. So it is yours, I finally said. Ford ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disrupting it for the first time since I'd known him. This is unexpected. That's the understatement of the century. I sat up, my mind racing. Ford, I announced to your entire family that I'm carrying your baby. Your father thinks we're in a secret relationship. Ethan looked like he wanted to die. And now it turns out that against all statistical probability, we actually did create a child together. With your hand. I'm aware of the facts, Harper. Are you aware that this is completely insane? I'm becoming increasingly aware, yes. Dr. Chen cleared her throat delicately. I'll give you two a moment to process. Miss Harper, you should schedule a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. I'll have my assistant set that up. In the meantime, start taking prenatal vitamins, avoid alcohol and certain medications. I'll send you a full list. She stood, pausing at the door. Congratulations, by the way. However it happened, you're going to be parents. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was alone with Ford Sterling in a dim ultrasound room, the image of our impossible child still frozen on the screen. What do we do? I asked. Ford looked at me, really looked at me, in a way that made me feel seen down to my bones. What do you want to do? I don't know. I didn't think any of this through. I just wanted to hurt Ethan, wanted him to feel a fraction of what I felt when I saw him with Tiffany. And now? I gestured helplessly at my stomach. Now I'm actually pregnant. With your baby. A baby we made without even having sex. It's rather impressive, when you think about it, Ford said, and there was the ghost of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. We managed to conceive a child while maintaining your technical virginity. That's got to be some kind of record. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, slightly hysterical. Only you would find the achievement angle in this nightmare. It's how I cope. He sobered, his expression turning serious. Harper, I meant what I said at the party. I take responsibility for my actions. If this child is mine and apparently, against all logic, it is, then I'm not going to run from that. What does that even mean? Are you saying we should? I couldn't finish the sentence. The idea was absurd. We barely knew each other. I'm saying we have options, Ford said carefully. We could co-parent. I could provide financial support. Or. He paused, something shifting in his expression. We could make it real. Make what real? The relationship everyone at that party thinks we have. He said it so calmly, like he was suggesting we grab dinner, not build an entire fake relationship around an accidentally conceived child. My father is already thrilled. It would solve several problems at once. You can't be serious. I'm always serious. Ford stood, buttoning his jacket with decisive movements. Think about it, Harper. You want revenge on Ethan? Being my fiancée, my wife, the mother of my child, that's the ultimate revenge. He'll have to watch you at every family gathering for the rest of his life, knowing he threw you away and I claimed you. And you'll have the protection of the Sterling name, financial security for you and the baby, and a father who's committed to being present. And what do you get out of this? I challenged. Because you don't strike me as the charitable type. No, I'm not. His eyes glinted. I get to finally have a family of my own, instead of being the eternal bachelor that everyone pities. I get to stop fielding questions about when I'm going to settle down. And I get. He hesitated, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. I get to prove that not all Sterling men are like Ethan. The offer hung in the air between us, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. A fake relationship that would become real by virtue of the very real child growing inside me. A marriage of convenience that solved problems for both of us. I need time to think, I said. Of course. Ford pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. I'm having a car pick you up tomorrow at noon. We're going to have brunch with my father. He'll want to discuss wedding plans. Ford, I just said I need time. And you'll have it. But in the meantime, we maintain the story we've already started. Otherwise, questions will arise, and questions lead to investigations, and investigations lead to the truth being much messy than necessary. He looked up from his phone. Can you do that? Play the part of my devoted girlfriend for a few hours. I thought about Ethan's face when I'd walked past him toward Ford. The delicious shock in his eyes, the way he'd folded the moment Ford put him in his place. The way I'd felt, for the first time in months, like I had power instead of being powerless. Yes, I said. I can do that. Good. Ford offered me his hand, helping me down from the examination table. His grip was warm, steady, and didn't let go even after I was standing. We're going to need to establish some ground rules. Boundaries. This can work, Harper, but only if we're both honest about what we expect from each other. I expect you not to make me fall in love with you, I said, only half joking. That would complicate things. Something flickered in Ford's expression, there and gone so fast I almost missed it. I'll do my best, he said. Though I should warn you, I've been told I'm devastatingly charming when I put in the effort. Lucky for me, you never put in the effort. Lucky for you, he agreed, but his eyes said something different. We left the hospital together, stepping out into the cool Manhattan night. The city sprawled around us, alive and glittering, full of people living their messy, complicated lives. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Ethan was probably consummating his engagement with Tiffany, thinking he'd dodged a bullet by getting rid of me. He had no idea the bullet had curved back around and was heading straight for him. Ford opened the car door for me, ever the gentleman. As I slid into the Maybach's leather interior, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow. Sharper. More certain. Harper, Ford said as he started the engine. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be an excellent mother. The comment caught me off guard. How would you know? You barely know me. I know you faced down a room full of sharks tonight and didn't blink. I know you're willing to fight for what you want, even if the method is unconventional. And I know that when you commit to something, you commit fully. He pulled into traffic, his profile illuminated by passing streetlights. Those are the qualities that matter. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Just watched the city slide by, thinking about the impossible thing growing inside me and the impossible man sitting beside me. Dash. Brunch at the Sterling estate was exactly as excruciating as I'd anticipated. Ford's father, William Sterling, presided over the table like a benevolent king surveying his kingdom. He was in his 70s but moved with the vigor of a man 20 years younger, his eyes sharp and assessing as they tracked every interaction between Ford and me. So, Harper, he said, cutting into his Eggs Benedict with surgical precision, Ford tells me you work in art curation. The Museum of Modern Art, is that right? I'd been a junior assistant in the educational programs department before they'd laid off half the staff last quarter, but Ford had clearly embellished my resume. I'm currently between positions, I said carefully. But yes, contemporary art is my passion. Excellent, excellent. William beamed. The Sterling Foundation has been looking for someone to manage our art acquisitions. I think you'd be perfect for the role. We can discuss salary and benefits after the wedding, of course. Wedding. The word hit me like a physical blow. This was moving too fast, spinning out of control before I could even catch my breath. Ford's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. A reminder. We're in this together. Play the part. That's very generous, Mr. Sterling, I managed. Please, call me William. Or Dad, if you're comfortable with that. His grin widened. After all, you're carrying my grandchild. That makes us family. Across the table, Ethan sat in stony silence. He'd been forced to attend this celebratory brunch along with Tiffany, who looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light every time she moved her hand, a rock so massive it probably had its own gravitational pull. I still don't understand how this happened, Ethan said suddenly, his voice tight. You and Uncle Ford? When did you even meet? We've crossed paths several times over the years, Ford said smoothly. But we reconnected at your birthday party on the yacht. Remember? Harper needed some fresh air, I offered to help, A&D. He shrugged, the picture of casual confidence. Sometimes chemistry just works. The memory of that night, the real version, not the sanitized story Ford was selling, made my cheeks burn. Ethan had no idea how close to the truth that lie actually was. How convenient, Ethan muttered. Ethan. William's voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. Your uncle has found happiness. I'd think you'd be glad for him, not bitter. I'm not bitter, I'm just. You're embarrassing yourself, Tiffany cut in, her voice cool and cultured. And me. Darling, perhaps we should go. I have a fitting for the wedding dress this afternoon. The reminder of their wedding, the one Ethan had scheduled for 3 months from now at some vineyard in the Hamptons, hung in the air. William pounced on it immediately. That reminds me. Ford, when are you two planning to tie the knot? We should do it before the baby arrives, don't you think? A proper wedding for a proper Sterling heir. Ford didn't miss a beat. We were thinking of a small ceremony next month. Nothing extravagant. Just family and close friends. Next month. 4 weeks. I nearly choked on my mimosa. Next month. William looked delighted. Wonderful. I'll have my assistant start making arrangements. We can use the estate, or if you prefer something more intimate, I know a lovely venue in Connecticut. Actually, I heard myself say, I was hoping we could do it in Central Park. The Conservatory Garden. It's where my parents got married. The lie came easily, smoothly, because my parents had actually gotten married in a courthouse in Queens with 2 witnesses and a hangover. But the Conservatory Garden was beautiful, and public, and the thought of having the ceremony in a place Ethan had never taken me, had never even thought to take me, felt like its own form of reclamation. Ford looked at me with something approaching admiration. The Conservatory Garden it is. Perfect. William clapped his hands together. I'll make a donation to the Central Park Conservancy. We'll have the whole garden reserved. Harper, do you have a dress in mind? I haven't thought that far ahead. No matter. I'll have several designers send over selections. You're going to be a Sterling bride, dear. We do things properly. He raised his glass. A toast. To Ford and Harper, and the unexpected blessing of new life. May your marriage be long, prosperous, and filled with many more grandchildren for me to spoil. We all clinked glasses. Ethan's expression looked like he'd been forced to swallow nails. Tiffany's smile was plastic. Ford's eyes met mine over the rim of his glass, unreadable as ever. And I thought, what have I gotten myself into? Dash. The month that followed was a whirlwind. Dress fittings. Menu tastings. Flower selections. Guest lists. Every decision made by William's frighteningly efficient wedding planner, a woman named Constance who moved through life like a general commanding troops. She had opinions about everything, from the thickness of the invitation card stock to the exact shade of white roses that would complement my skin tone. Through it all, Ford was present. Not overbearing, not absent. Just there. He showed up to every appointment, offered opinions when asked, deferred to my choices when I had them. He learned that I hated lilies because they reminded me of funerals, that I preferred silver over gold, that I couldn't stand the texture of fondant on wedding cakes. We spent more time together in those 4 weeks than we had in the entire time I'd known him. And slowly, carefully, something shifted. It started small. Ford bringing me ginger tea in the mornings when the pregnancy nausea hit. Me learning that he took his coffee black, no sugar, always in the same specific mug. Him discovering I was chronically late to everything and started telling me appointments were 30 minutes earlier than they actually were. Me realizing he had a dry, subtle sense of humor that most people missed entirely. We established our ground rules. No expectations of romantic love, but mutual respect required. Separate bedrooms in his penthouse apartment until after the baby arrived, then we'd reassess. Complete honesty about our feelings and concerns. And most importantly, we were a united front to the outside world, but behind closed doors, we could be ourselves. It should have felt clinical, transactional. Instead, it felt like the most honest relationship I'd ever had. 2 weeks before the wedding, we had our second ultrasound. The baby had grown, no longer just a flutter but a visible shape with tiny limb buds and a head that was disproportionately large for its body. "Do you want to know the sex?" Dr. Chen asked. Ford and I looked at each other. "Not yet," I said, and he nodded in agreement. Some surprises were worth waiting for. That night, as we sat in his living room, me with my feet propped up on an ottoman, him reviewing contracts on his laptop, I finally asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "Do you regret it? Any of this?" Ford looked up, his expression thoughtful. "Regret is useless. It changes nothing. What happened, happened. Now we deal with the consequences. That's very practical. I'm a practical man." He closed his laptop, giving me his full attention. "But to answer your real question, no. I don't regret it. This wasn't what I planned, but very little in life goes according to plan. You adapt or you fail. I prefer to adapt. And you think we can make this work? Really work? I think," Ford said carefully, "that we have a better shot than most couples. We're not pretending to be something we're not. We're not operating under the delusion that love conquers all. We're two adults making a practical choice for practical reasons. That's more honest than 90% of marriages out there. That's depressing. That's realistic." He paused. "But Harper, I want you to know that even though this started as a convenience, I'm committed to making it good. For you, for the baby, for us. I'm not Ethan. I don't make promises I can't keep." The sincerity in his voice made something in my chest tighten. "Okay," I whispered. "I believe you." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of autumn day that makes you believe in benevolent gods and good omens. The conservatory garden was stunning, transformed into a wonderland of white roses and trailing ivy, with the string quartet playing something classical and beautiful that I didn't recognize. I stood in the small preparation room, staring at my reflection. The dress was simple, a column of ivory silk that schemed my body, highlighting the tiny bump that was just starting to show. My hair was down, loose waves around my shoulders. No veil. I'd wanted to be able to see clearly. My mother had flown in from Florida, her eyes perpetually damp with happy tears. "You look beautiful, baby girl," she kept saying. "Just beautiful." My father, gruff and uncomfortable in his rented tux, had pulled me aside that morning. "You sure about this, Harper? It's not too late to back out if you're having doubts." I'd hugged him tight. "I'm sure, Dad." And the strange thing was, I meant it. Constance appeared in the doorway. "It's time." The walk down the garden path should have felt surreal, should have felt like I was play acting at something I didn't deserve. Instead, it felt right. The late afternoon sun filtering through the trees, the faces of Ford's family and friends turning to watch me approach, and at the end of it all, Ford Sterling in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a photograph. His eyes met mine, and he smiled. Not the polite, social smile he gave to business associates. A real smile, genuine and warm and just for me. I reached his side, and he took my hand. His fingers were steady, warm, anchor solid. The officiant began to speak, but I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Ford, on the weight of the moment, on the fact that this ridiculous, impossible, completely unplanned situation had somehow led me here. "Do you, Ford William Sterling, take Harper Elizabeth Reeves to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Harper Elizabeth Reeves, take Ford William Sterling to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked at this man, this complicated, controlled, unexpectedly kind man who had shown me more respect in 4 weeks than Ethan had in 2 years. Who had stayed with me through a drunken breakdown, who had claimed my child as his without hesitation, who had never once made me feel like I was anything less than his equal. I do. The kiss was chaste, appropriate for the watching crowd. But as Ford's lips brushed mine, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not love, not yet. But the possibility of love. The space where it could grow, if we let it. We turned to face the guests, and the applause washed over us. William was beaming. My mother was crying. And there, in the third row, Ethan sat frozen, his face a mask of shock and something that might have been regret. I felt nothing looking at him. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just indifference. He'd become irrelevant, a footnote in a story that had moved on without him. The reception was held in William's estate, a sprawling celebration of excess that must have cost more than most people's annual salary. But it was joyful too, filled with music and laughter and dancing. Ford proved to be a surprisingly good dancer. We moved together across the floor for our first dance, and he leaned down to murmur in my ear. "You're smiling. So are you. I have good reason to." His hand pressed against the small of my back. "I just married a beautiful, intelligent woman who's carrying my child. That's cause for a celebration. Even if it all started as a lie. The best things often do." He spun me gently, careful of my condition. "Besides, it doesn't feel like a lie anymore. Does it?" I looked up at him, at this man who had somehow become my husband, my partner, the father of my child. "No," I admitted. "It doesn't." Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself alone on the terrace, looking out over the manicured gardens. The baby was doing something that felt like fluttering butterflies inside me, still too small to be definitive kicks, but definitely movement. "Plotting your escape already?" Ford's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, jacket off, tie loosened, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. "Just thinking. About how 6 weeks ago, I crashed your nephew's engagement party planning to ruin his life. And instead, I somehow ended up married to you." Ford crossed the terrace to stand beside me. "Life has a dark sense of humor. The darkest." I paused. "Ford? Can I ask you something?" "Always. That night on the yacht. When I was drunk and crying and throwing myself at you. You could have just left me there. Called someone else. Why did you stay?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. "Then, because you reminded me of myself." "What?" "Years ago, I was engaged. Her name was Caroline. Old money, perfect pedigree, everything the Sterlings could want in a daughter-in-law." His voice was distant, detached. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out she'd been cheating on me with my business partner. The affair had been going on for a year. They thought I was too busy, too focused on work to notice. "Ford, I'm so sorry. I called off the wedding. Cut ties with my partner. Buried myself in work and convinced myself I was better off alone. And maybe I was." He turned to look at me. "But that night, watching you break down because someone you loved had betrayed you, treating you like you didn't matter. I saw my younger self. And I thought, maybe this time, I could keep someone from making the same mistakes I did." "What mistakes?" "Closing off. Deciding that solitude is safer than risk." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. "You made me realize something, Harper. I've spent 10 years protecting myself from being hurt again. But protection and isolation are the same thing. And I don't want to be isolated anymore." The vulnerability in his admission made my eyes sting. "I don't want that either." "Good." He squeezed my hand. "Because I have a proposition for you." "Another one?" "We're already married. Let's make this real. Not the marriage that's already legal. But us. Let's actually try. No more ground rules about separate bedrooms and no expectations. Let's see if we can build something genuine from this absurd foundation we've created." My heart was thundering. "Ford, that's terrifying. Most worthwhile things are." He turned to face me fully, both hands holding mine now. "I'm not promising perfect. I'm not promising easy. But I'm promising honest effort, Harper. A real partnership. A real chance at happiness. What do you say?" I thought about Ethan, who had promised me the world and delivered nothing. I thought about all the years I'd wasted waiting for him to choose me, to value me, to see me is enough. And then I thought about Ford, who had seen me at my absolute worst and stayed anyway. Who had claimed my child without hesitation. Who had married me knowing the whole thing started as revenge theater, and somehow turned it into something real. I say yes, I whispered. Let's try. Ford's smile could have lit up the entire city. He pulled me close, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other pressed against my lower back. This kiss wasn't chaste. It was deep, consuming, filled with promise and possibility. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Mrs. Sterling, he murmured. Mr. Sterling, I replied, grinning like an idiot. I think I could get used to this. Me too. Dash. The nursery was painted a soft sage green, the color of new growth and fresh starts. Ford had commissioned a local artist to paint a mural on one wall, a sprawling forest scene with hidden animals tucked into the branches and roots. I could spend hours finding new details every time I looked at it. Our daughter Lily Margaret Sterling was currently sleeping in my arms, her tiny face peaceful and perfect. She'd been born 3 weeks ago via an easy delivery that Ford had coached me through with surprising competence. Apparently, he'd taken a secret course in childbirth preparation and hadn't told me because he wanted to be useful, not annoying. He was being useful now, setting up the bassinet beside our bed. Our bed. Singular. We'd merged bedrooms 2 months into the marriage, and it had felt like the most natural thing in the world. She has your nose, I said, studying Lily's features for the 1000th time. And your stubborn chin, Ford replied, securing the last screw. He straightened, admiring his handiwork, then crossed to us. His finger traced the curve of Lily's cheek with devastating gentleness. She's perfect. She really is. We'd told the whole story to William last month, unable to keep up the pretense anymore. The truth about the yacht, the accidental conception, the revenge plot at Ethan's engagement party. We'd expected anger, disappointment, maybe even disinherit aunts. Instead, William had laughed until he cried. You two are absolutely insane, he'd said, wiping his eyes. And absolutely perfect for each other. Who cares how it started? Look where you ended up. Ethan and Tiffany had gotten married as planned, moved to Connecticut, and according to family gossip, were already in couples therapy. I felt nothing but pity when I thought about them now. They'd built their relationship on expectations and obligations. Ford and I had built ours on honesty and choice. What are you thinking about? Ford asked, settling beside me on the rocking chair's ottoman. About how none of this should have worked. But it did. But it did, I agreed, leaning into his shoulder. Lily stirred, making a small sound before settling back into sleep. Ford? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't crashed that party? Sometimes. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. But then I remember that I don't care. Because whatever path led us here, I'm grateful for it. For you. For her. For this entire ridiculous, impossible, absolutely perfect life we've built. I tilted my head up to kiss him, soft and sweet. I love you, I said. The first time I'd said it out loud, though I'd felt it for months. Ford's smile was brilliant, unguarded, completely genuine. I love you too, Mrs. Sterling. Even though you're completely insane. Especially because I'm completely insane. Especially because of that. Outside, the city hummed with life. People were living their stories, making their mistakes, finding their own impossible paths to happiness. But here, in this quiet room with my husband and daughter, I'd found mine. It hadn't been the path I'd planned. It had started with heartbreak and revenge and a spectacularly ill-conceived pregnancy announcement. But it had led me here to love, to family, to a future I'd never imagined but couldn't picture living without. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst decisions. Sometimes revenge turns into redemption. And sometimes, the man you marry out of spite becomes the love of your life. Life has a dark sense of humor. But I wouldn't change a single moment.